The fire in the small room flickered, casting dancing shadows across the walls. Helena sat in her chair, staring into the flames, her thoughts tangled like the vines in her mother's garden. For years she had lived by one unshakable belief: sacrifice was love. If she gave enough, endured enough, and bent enough, she would finally be worthy. But tonight, something inside her had cracked. It wasn't just a fleeting thought or a moment of exhaustion. It was the realization that she had spent her life in servitude to the expectations of others, while neglecting her own desires, her own needs, her own existence. First idea: the illusion of obligation. Helena had always been the person others turned to. When her sister needed money, she gave it. When her friend needed a place to stay, she offered her home. When her employer demanded more hours, she complied without question. Each time, she convinced herself that this was her role, that she was obligated to help, that it was expected of her. But now, sitting alone with nothing left to give, she asked herself, who had told her she must always sacrifice? Who had written this invisible contract binding her to the needs of others? Was it society, her upbringing, or had she simply mistaken obligation for kindness? She thought of the Stoics and their teaching that external events and the expectations of others were beyond her control. Only her own choices were hers. Had she ever truly chosen this life of endless giving? Or had she merely surrendered to the weight of obligation, believing it was noble? A quiet anger rose within her. If sacrifice was an expectation she had never agreed to, then she had the right to walk away from it, and perhaps, just perhaps, it was time to choose differently. Second idea: the weight of external validation. Helena's heart clenched at the thought of letting people down. The disapproving looks, the disappointed sighs, these were the things that had always tethered her in place. She had spent years molding herself to be what others needed, desperate for approval, for the warmth of acceptance. She realized then that she had never truly lived for herself. Every action had been a performance, every decision made with an audience in mind. The need for validation had become a prison, one that she had built with her own hands. Marcus Aurelius had written, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." Helena closed her eyes, letting the words settle deep within her. Why had she placed so much weight on the judgments of those who never carried her burdens? If their approval was conditional on her suffering, was it ever worth having? She exhaled slowly. No more. She would not be a puppet to the expectations of others. She would listen to her own voice, however faint it seemed after years of suppression. Third idea: the power of self-possession. The next day, Helena received a call from her friend, Anna. "I need a favor," Anna said. "Can you cover for me at work, just for a few days? I know it's last minute, but..." Helena's stomach twisted. The old her would have said yes without hesitation, despite being exhausted. But something inside her had shifted. Her time, her energy, these were not infinite resources to be spent at the whim of others. "I'm sorry, Anna. I can't this time." A pause. Then a sigh of irritation. "Wow, okay. I didn't think you'd say no." Helena felt the familiar pang of guilt, but she forced herself to sit with it. She had done nothing wrong. Saying no was not cruelty, it was self-respect. Seneca had said, "If you don't know what port you are sailing to, no wind is favorable." If she spent her life constantly adjusting to the needs of others, she would never steer toward the life she wanted. Anna's disappointment was hers to carry. Helena would no longer take responsibility for emotions that were not her own. For the first time in her life, she felt the firm ground beneath her feet, the weight of her own choices anchoring her. Fourth idea: the balance between compassion and self-respect. Helena had always believed that to be kind, she had to be selfless. But as she moved through the days with her newfound resolve, she saw the flaw in that belief. There was a difference between helping others and betraying oneself. She could still be compassionate, she could still care, but not at the expense of her own well-being. The Stoics taught that virtue lay in wisdom, not in self-destruction, and wisdom meant knowing when to give and when to step back. When her sister asked for money again, Helena did not immediately say yes. Instead, she offered to help her find financial guidance. When her boss demanded more hours, she calmly but firmly set her boundaries. Not everyone reacted well. Some called her selfish, some drifted away. But for the first time in her life, Helena felt whole. She no longer saw kindness as a transaction. She would give when she chose, not when it was expected. Fifth idea: the liberation of inner freedom. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Helena walked through the quiet streets, feeling lighter than she had in years. She was no longer shackled by obligation. She no longer feared disapproval. She had reclaimed her life. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, it was hers. And that, she realized, was worth more than all the sacrifices she had ever made. Helena continued her journey, encountering new challenges but meeting them with a newfound strength. She was not unkind. She was not unfeeling. She was simply whole. And in that wholeness, she had discovered a different kind of generosity, the kind that did not come from depletion, but from abundance. A generosity born not of obligation, but of choice. Are you ready to reclaim your power, set boundaries, and live life on your own terms? If this story inspired you, don't stop here. Hit that subscribe button and become part of a community that embraces Stoic wisdom for a stronger, freer mind. Tell us in the comments, have you ever struggled? How did you break free? Your story could inspire someone else on their journey. Like this video if you found value in it. Each like helps us reach more people who need this message of self-respect and inner strength. Together we rise, together we grow. Subscribe now and walk the Stoic path with us.